Okay, I think I'm live now. Let's see. Hopefully this works. I've never tried it through OBS Studio before. I think this is working. Okay. Wow, that sound is terrible. What is going on here? Hold on. Hi, Leon. I can see the chat here. Let's see if I can fix the sound. I don't know what's going on. It's just like this horrible noise. Well, the noise that I hear seems pretty bad. You guys can hear it too, right? I'm assuming. Yeah, Lance says no noise cancellation. Did I pick the wrong mic? I wanted to do a stream, but I don't know if this is going to be any good like this. I don't have another mic to try either. Oh, actually, wait. I think I do have another mic. Let me go for 1 minute, and I will try that. Give me 1 second. Okay, I got another mic, and I'm going to try this one instead. Okay, is the sound back now, guys?
Hello.
Hold on. Okay. Race Lover, you're killing me. I don't use AOL, but I am trying to do something per your request from last time. I'm trying to use OBS Studio, and I've never used it before. And I'm having trouble with my mic settings. Let's see. Okay, can everybody at least hear me now? Okay, can everybody at least hear me now? Okay, can everybody at least hear me like this then? I don't think the sound quality is great, but as long as you guys can understand me, then okay. Then I think it's okay. Can everybody at least hear me like this then? I don't think the sound quality is great, but as long as you guys can understand me, then okay. Then I think it's okay. Can everybody at least hear me like this then? I don't dare change it again, but maybe the echo got... Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this. Hopefully you guys can hear me, and hopefully there's no more echo. Loop track artist. I have a looper pedal for my guitar. So hi everybody. Hopefully you can hear me now. There's always a little bit of a delay in what I can see you guys reply and what I'm actually saying. So hopefully now everyone can hear me, and hopefully there is no delay or echo. So if that is the case, then I will start. Maybe just let me know, guys, that there is no echo and that you can at least hear me, even if the sound quality is not the best. As long as you can understand me, I think it's fine. Then I'll try to sort this mess out for next time. Okay, so let us begin. Great. Thanks, Mina's Murder. So thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to do another vegan news and views live stream. I'm going to cover a ton of articles today. I've been meaning to do this for a while, so I just kept collecting more and more articles, and it's just kind of funny. But yeah, so let us begin here. I can hopefully switch to this view, and you guys will hopefully see my screen as well as me on the webcam. And this was actually per request from Race Lover last time. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. Let me check the chat. Alright, cool. I think it's working. So just let me know if it's not. And but I think you guys can hopefully see good old Bryan Adams here on the screen. So just let me know if that's not the case, and I can I can try and change some stuff, but hopefully this works. Cool. All right. Racelars he needs me to sing Boy George to properly test for the sound. Yeah, that's not going to work. But I am glad that you can see Bryan Adams on the screen and me. Okay, great. So first article here, just a kind of a feel-good thing to kick off the news. Bryan Adams is basically encouraging people to go vegan, and basically, yeah, it's just another nice thing to see. A well-known artist, very huge following, and he's encouraging people to go vegan and eat a vegan holiday meal for Christmas, because he actually references the article that I mentioned in the previous episode, where the slaughterhouse industry is actually having trouble finding people who are willing to work in the slaughterhouses, and they're even saying that it's not a problem of price. They're saying they just can't find people. Nobody wants to do that work. So this is something I talked about in the last one, and the singer here is just saying that whether you work in the meat industry or not, check out the Guardian article. Then he links to that, and the title there: "No one wants to kill your dinner. It brings light to the problem humans are having slaughtering animals and the effect it has on their mental health." And he shared this, with his followers. So I just think, this is fantastic. I think the more people that go vegan, and the more people with lots of followers that go vegan and they share this information with them, the more chance we have to spread the message in a positive way and encourage more and more people to at least try maybe a holiday meal as a vegan meal and things like that. So I think that's really cool. Give me 1 second while I resize this, because I can't really see your chats, guys. Give me 1 second. It's hard to see the screen and you guys at the same time. Okay, now I think I'll be able to rock and roll. Okay, cool. All right. Yep. So Racelar says Bryan didn't mention that in the summer of '69. Yeah, maybe he should have, but maybe he wasn't vegan back then. So it's really good. Steph says, as I look around the airport, I see so many extremely unhealthy people who really need to go plant-based. Yep, that's absolutely true. All right, cool. Next one is a pretty serious article that I'm sure a lot of you have seen. There was a climate report that was released by the U.S. government. I believe it was commissioned actually back in the Obama days, and they had a previous one, and this was a follow-up to the previous version that was already released back a couple of years ago. And the report basically comes out and says that there are going to be major impacts to the U.S. economy by the century's end if we don't rein in global warming. And they're saying that they're actually putting a financial kind of like price tag on the damage to the economy, and they're saying that it could take as much as 10% off the U.S. economy by the century's end. And they put actual, kind of pretty staggering figures on specific things, like how many people are going to die from elevated temperatures, so like heat strokes and all this kind of stuff. They're talking about like wildfires, they're talking about droughts, they're talking about flooding. They have all sorts of examples in here about a nuclear power plant that got shut down for years as a result of flooding. They're talking about the impact of coal. They're talking about all sorts of stuff. And this is a very powerful report. They're giving, very poignant examples from the recent past, from a few years ago. And like they show this one here in Thailand. Western Digital is an American company. They produce hard drives. This is something that I think most people wouldn't even associate with climate change per se, but it hit the tech sector really badly when their plant got flooded in Thailand, and they lost almost $200 million. It says $199 million, and it cut their drive shipments in half for the quarter of 2011, and then it caused hard drive price increases in the competitors as well, because basically nobody could meet the the regular demand. So this is just one example. They had the example about the nuclear power plant here in Omaha that got shut down, and you know, they're just talking about like lots more flooding and fires on the way, and they're saying how a lot of the other states, like in the southeast of the U.S., they're not even familiar with dealing with the kind of like the fire season, like out west. I think it's just been happening for longer, so people are more prepped, and they're really just kind of calling attention to the fact that more and more people are going to be affected by this. And there were some pretty staggering figures in here. I can't remember the exact amount for the deaths from the increased heat, but it was something like $100-something billion. I'm trying to find that. Yeah, they're saying $141 billion from heat-related deaths. So just think about that. That's a staggering figure. That's just talking about the people that die from the elevated temperatures. They're saying another $118 billion from sea level rise and $32 billion from infrastructure damage. So these are like very, very severe. And then, of course, the White House tried to downplay the findings of this report. They're saying that they're just alarmist and that, you know, this is just based on the most extreme, like, worst-case scenario. So they're going to ignore it. And the release of the report came out the Friday after Thanksgiving as well. So pretty much they guaranteed that it was going to be a non-news item, and most people weren't going to bother like reading this or dealing with this. So I thought this was a pretty good article, and hopefully a lot of people read it, but I kind of don't have very high hopes for it getting much traction in the U.S. I think a lot of people probably just ignored this or didn't even see it, but it's a pretty damning report. Meat is Murder is asking me to debunk Logan Blake. Why do I have to debunk him? We cannot keep eating the meat, we do it. I don't understand that. Okay, Bryan Adams is pretty cute for a 60-year-old, says Steph. So is Ray Slaver. And okay, and okay. You guys are funny. All right, next article. Poland recently hosted a bunch of, you know, kind of conferences from world leaders talking about global warming and its impacts and what can be done. This was at the end of November, and they were encouraging people at the COP convention on climate change, it's United Nations committee. They were encouraging people to plant more trees and like you know, do more basically to offset, you know, carbon emissions. But you know, Ray Slaver's distracting me. He says, why didn't I read his sex comment? He's sexy for any age. I'm sure you are. Yes, you're sexy for any age. Okay, so they're basically saying that, yeah, you know, like they need to plant more trees, they need to offset more carbon dioxide emissions, but as this article points out, they're basically kind of paying lip service in a way because they heavily rely on coal, and even though they've done a lot in the recent past few years to try to you know, make that burning process more efficient and produce less CO2 and all this kind of stuff, it still is a very high impact on the environment. And they even went so far as to go and log trees from one of the I guess like the only remaining like old growth forests left in Europe, and they were basically logging trees from there under the guise of basically saying that they were trying to fight a outbreak of some beetle. I forget where it was. Here they mentioned it somewhere. Yeah, it says the nation has also been called out for its logging in the I'm not even going to pronounce this, Białowieża forest, the last remaining section of a primeval forest that covered Europe over 10,000 years ago. The forest is also home to birds, wolves, lynx, and 25% of the world's European buffalo population. And they're basically, you know, Greenpeace has said they've toppled as many as 100,000 trees, and they're saying that it's to, you know, try to stop this spruce beetle outbreak. But basically, you know, UNESCO and a bunch of other, you know, kind of pressures internationally were brushed aside, and they just kept doing it. So now they're going to get a fine, basically, and you know, it just goes to show you that, like, I think really politicians can't be trusted, and you know, they're really just paying lip service. It's kind of a PR stunt, as this article rightly concludes. I think that they're saying, yeah, plant a bunch of trees, and that's great. We should plant more trees. We should have more wild areas. But what they're doing is the exact opposite, and also it's not enough to offset what they're doing in the form of burning coal and in the form of what we're doing as far as animal agriculture goes. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So, okay, you guys are talking about other stuff. That's fine. Next, I want to get into a whole bunch of kind of articles related to cows. This one was just an interesting kind of ridiculous article that I saw on MSN recently. They're talking about this restaurant chain called Five Guys. It's a hamburger place, and they're basically just calling out as almost like just an interesting tidbit about this place that this chain restaurant doesn't allow you to choose the doneness of your hamburger. They basically get all done the same way, and they're all well done. And they're basically speculating as to why that happens, and they're saying that some of it might just be that they can get uniformity, and the timing and everything of the food processing gets all in sync, and so things are more efficient and they save money. But ultimately, as this article points out, it's probably most likely to deal with food contamination like E. coli and Salmonella. And then they talk about how they installed temperature tracking in all of the Five Guys locations so that they can make sure that the meat is done to a well done standard, and hopefully reduce the chance of getting sick from E. coli and Salmonella. And it's really crazy that you see an article like this, and how many people I think read this and they think, oh, okay, well, that just explains why I can't get a rare burger at this place or whatever. But they don't think geez, maybe I shouldn't be eating anything that can make me sick if it's not basically burnt to a charred crisp. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Meat is Murder says they don't want to pay out lawsuits. Yeah, I'm sure they don't, and I'm sure that some guy in some suit in the headquarters probably decided that look, guys, it's better to lose a few customers that maybe want a rare burger than it is to pay out for somebody who gets sick. And you don't have to look far to find the latest recall. Here's the latest one that I found. They're recalling 5.1 million pounds of beef for Salmonella. 246 people were sick. This was from December 4th. You guys probably remember just right before Thanksgiving, I talked about how there was a huge turkey recall. That also made, I don't know, however many people sick. These are just regular occurrences. It's like every couple weeks you read about one of these things. So here it was, the turkey one resulted in 164 people across 35 U.S. states getting sick. And these are just U.S. figures. So, you have to realize other high meat consumption countries probably have similar amounts of people getting sick, or maybe it's probably scaled down for the population. But I'm sure comparatively, if you're looking at percentages, it's probably much the same. And they just talk about other outbreaks that have happened earlier this year, and you can see that it's millions of eggs. There's the 5.1 millions of pounds of beef. I mean, it's just amazing that people just don't see this and think geez, maybe we shouldn't be consuming this stuff. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. So it's just really sad that all these animal products go and make people sick. They kill the animals, and then in this case, these products then get thrown away. They don't even get eaten. They just go straight into the landfill. So think of the amount of waste that produces as far as just raising the animals, then of course the killing of them, then packaging them, shipping them all over, the cooling to keep them cool. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on. It's just unbelievable. Going along that kind of thought here, there was a kind of funny story that made the rounds. I saw this on Twitter and a bunch of other places. People were talking about this cow called Knickers. You can see him in the video clip here at the top. Knickers is a huge 6'4" tall cow, and basically, he's 3,000 pounds, and the reason why he didn't get killed is because he's so big, he didn't fit down the the animal chute, basically at the slaughterhouse. And actually, I just want to kind of say that this was actually kind of funny because for a couple of reasons. One is that when I first saw the headlines for this story, a lot of people referenced it as he was saved from the abattoir, but he wasn't actually saved. It's not like the farmer gave him to a sanctuary or that somebody rescued him or whatever. It's just that he was so big that they just couldn't kill him, so they just like let him stay on the farm. And it's just kind of crazy that like it's almost like a lot of the stories that I saw about this almost painted it as this kind of like nice little feel good, like, oh, this you know, this particular animal is going to be spared from the slaughterhouse. But it's not for any altruistic reason. It's not because the farmer was like, oh, I feel bad for this guy, he's too cute, I don't want to kill him. It's like, no, it's just he didn't kill him quick enough to actually be able to make a buck. Now it's too expensive, and kind of like he'd probably have to get slaughtered like there on the farm, and it's probably illegal, or they don't have their permitting, or who knows, you know. So now it's like he gets to live out his life, I guess, as long as, you know, the farmer still kind of allows it. But it's just kind of crazy. And then the other thing that's really funny is that he's actually not a cow, because cows are female bovines, and so he should probably properly be called a steer. And the thing that was really interesting about this, I had no idea either. I thought, wow, this, you know, this particular specimen is just so huge, like that it was some kind of abnormality. But then I found this interesting article. This was on the New York Times. This person wrote an article that basically said, like, look, we just don't even know what the size of a normal steer is, because we never see them grow to be that big, because they always get killed so young. And this article goes on and talks about a whole bunch of other cows. This is another one. This one's even bigger. He's 6'8", and this cow or steer is living out his life at a farm sanctuary, and this is like a normal size animal. So apparently, you know, it's just like in everybody's mind, I think, from all the stuff I've ever seen, you know, I would think, I would look at this picture and I'd think like, wow, this you know, steer is huge. It's like a huge cow. But no, this is actually quite normal. It's just you would never see a steer grow this size, because they're all killed, especially the male you know, calves. They're killed really young, sent to the veal industry, or sometimes shot as day-old calves, and because they're not producing milk, so they're not something that you would normally ever see grow up to full size. So this was just a great article. I really recommend this to everybody. You guys should definitely read this. And yeah, it's just really cool. And they give some other examples about these cows and these steers that are living their lives out at sanctuaries. And you know, the author basically just talks about how it's just, you know, people are so removed from, you know, the norm that they think that Knickers is kind of out of the norm, when in all actuality, he's actually quite normal. He's not big, he's just grown up, and it's just difficult to see like a grown-up steer next to a whole bunch of like adolescent cows and steers that they're not fully adults yet. So pretty crazy. Yeah, meat is murder. Yeah, we don't get to see them grow up. So yeah, it's just really crazy, and that's why we think it's such an abnormality, but it's totally normal actually. So I thought this article was really good. Definitely check this out. This one is very sad. This one comes out of China. A abattoir got in trouble for basically pumping cows getting ready for slaughter full of water. They ran tubes into their nostrils and pumped them full of water so that they could get more money by weight, because they were obviously selling them by the weight. And it's a horrific story. I don't even want to scroll down, but I just think, you know, this goes to show you kind of like what extremes people will go to when profit is the only motivation, and there is no such thing as kind of like a humane approach to exploiting these animals, well, or any animal. But you know, this is just kind of one example, and yeah, it's just really sad. Race Liver says children killers. Yeah, I mean, there's that chart that I don't know if anybody has seen that, but or probably most of the people watching have seen it, but they show a little graphic of the different animals that we use in, you know, food industries, and it shows their age at time of slaughter versus like what their normal life expectancy is. So if you kind of correlate it to human terms, they're basically all babies when they get killed, or adolescents maybe at best. So most of these animals that are getting killed, you know, sometimes as young as like 6 weeks old, 8 weeks old, you know, they're a couple months old basically. They're just tiny animals, and they're getting killed. So yeah. Leon says, sadly, the Western world lets them starve for a couple of days so their guts are empty. Is that for the transportation? Probably, so they don't have as much poop and pee, I guess, maybe in the trucks and stuff. I mean, it's terrible. I think it's just whatever, whatever proves to be more profitable, that's what people will do, and it's just terrible. This was a shocking story, I think, to many people. I don't know if anybody has seen this, but this was all over like Twitter. There is a festival that happens in various parts of Spain, Portugal, I think even in parts of France. They have this thing where they basically attach like these flaming, burning, I don't even know what the hell you would call these wooden stakes to a living bull's horns, and then the poor animal tries to run around and just basically is going crazy from fright and fear, and they're trying to put out the fire and running into stuff to try to put out the fire that's burning on top of its head, basically, and it's horrific. And there's several cities that have applied for kind of like, I guess, like a World Heritage or cultural whatever exemption from animal cruelty laws, like in the EU, so that they could continue this tradition as and designate it as a cultural kind of like event, so that it won't get shut down. And rightfully so, all sorts of animal advocacy groups are calling for the banning of such events. And even the pictures that came out from this particular one that this story shares on the Daily Mail, it was done by people who were attending the event in secrecy, and they filmed kind of like against the rules, and they took screenshots and stuff and sent that off to news media associations. And it's just it's just such a horrible thing. Like, this is something that I tried to talk to Carnival about when I was debating him on the ethics. Even when I was a heavy consumer of animal products, I would have been against this kind of cruelty, because this is just completely senseless. Even if you don't know any better and you think you need to eat animal products for health or whatever the case is, how can you justify this? This is just completely senseless, abject violence for no purpose whatsoever. You're just literally torturing a poor animal. And I find it shocking that in today's day and age, like, people don't see that this is just completely beyond like inappropriate. Bullfighting, this kind of thing, the cockfighting, dog fighting. I mean, it's like, how can people not see that this is inappropriate? I just don't understand. And then to actually go and apply for like a heritage designation on this, it's just beyond shocking to me. What is it with Spain and bulls? Yeah, it's not just Spain though, Race Lover. That's the thing. It's Portugal as well, and France, and I don't know, but I think in various parts of South America, obviously probably from the Spanish kind of like cultural appropriation, I think they also did or still do bullfighting as well. And I just want to read through the comments here. About the starving the cows. Meat is murder, asked if it's to stop feces contamination after slaughter. And Leon says it's so the slaughterhouse workers have a lower chance of infection from cutting up the corpse. Yeah, that's terrible. I mean, that's just awful. Yeah. It's just insane. I don't know. People just need to wake up to this kind of stuff, and I think it's not for nothing that of course they want to ban cell phones and cameras from these events, because I'm pretty sure that on a deep down level, like, everyone, even the people who are organizing this event, know that it's not good publicity. It's not good press to have these kind of images out there in the public, because I think the more people would see it, the more they would be against it. This is kind of staying along the lines of like cows and milk, and this I thought was just a ridiculous kind of article that I saw where they were basically talking about milk alternatives. And at first I thought, like, okay, like, seems kind of interesting, like, I wonder what they're going to say. But basically it's almost like a scaremongering article where they literally go through the most common kind of like milk alternatives and non-dairy milks, and they basically try and say something bad about every one of them. So they're basically saying, like, soy milk, okay, well, it has phytoestrogens, and then it's like, well, there's some debate about whether or not it messes up your estrogen levels, and it's like, actually, if you look at the science, there is no debate. Like, it's completely safe. and it has no effect. If anything, it has a beneficial effect on estrogen levels for women and things like that, and lowers your chances of breast cancer and prostate cancer and all this kind of stuff. But like, here's this article trying to kind of call it into question and say that it can disrupt hormones. So that's ridiculous. And then if you go through the next one and the next one, it's like they have something like this for each one. So they're talking about like almond milk, and they're like, well, but it's it's made from almonds, and so it's like not good for people with nut allergies, and also it can mess up your thyroid gland, and if you have thyroid issues. And so it's like they try and basically knock everything. They give you some positive, but they really want to leave you with the negatives of like, yeah, maybe you're just better off sticking with the milk, And I just found this article to be kind of annoying, and it's just typical propaganda. I don't know this website, Culinary Zen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also have many similar kind of crap articles. But anyway, Meat is Murder says they used to throw goats live off the top of buildings in Spain too. Jesus, I have not heard of that. That's awful. I can't even believe what would be the justification for saying that. I just don't even understand. Yeah. Now this article, this next one here, I actually I found this in Hungarian media here. Actually, my wife showed it to me. This is an insane article. I'm just going to pick out a couple of stats for you guys. They talk about worldwide figures, though. So this is apparently done from a Edinburgh study. But anyway, they're basically saying that up to 16% of the world's dairy products go to waste. They never even make it to people, or they don't get consumed. So every year they're saying there is 116 million tons of milk and dairy products that go to waste. That's just an incredible amount. And they're also talking about how there's I don't even know if it was like millions of tons. What was it? Shoot, I can't remember. Oh yeah, 67 million tons of dairy waste that actually gets fed to livestock animals. So it's like I think it's probably gone bad enough that it can't be deemed fit for human consumption, but then they still feed it to animals. So Ray Slayer, you're always trying to get me in trouble. There's no way I'm going to read that out loud. But anyway, so yeah, just shocking figures, and yeah, just really goes to show you kind of with the meat that gets thrown out, with the dairy that gets thrown out, it's just so incredibly wasteful. And then never mind the inefficiency of it all just to begin with, even if everything worked perfectly as they planned. This was a bit of kind of good news in the sense that animal activists won a lawsuit against dairy industry people who were suing them for calling cow's milk inhumane. They had advertising billboards up in the UK, and the legal decision came down in favor of the vegans. So they said that they basically sided with Go Vegan World, and they said that they can indeed say that milk is inhumane, and that is wonderful news, and that is the absolute truth. And I think the more people see this, the better, and the more people that ditch dairy, the better. So I just think this is a great a great decision, and I hope that other places follow suit. And yeah, basically this article I think also kind of shows the hypocrisy of the various associations that are supposedly there to ensure people are getting quality humane kind of animal products like the RSPCA. This is the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. I've talked about this before. If people watch Foot Soldier, he's talked about this before. This association is just a laugh. It's a laughing stock. I mean, it's like they claim to basically assure the consumer of humane treatment for the animals for the products that you're buying. And even here they say, unsurprisingly, this ruling has been the subject of some criticism, and even from the RSPCA. So they, an ambassador for the RSPCA, David Bowes, Bowles stated that they used very emotive and anthropomorphic language, applying human emotions to a calf or dairy cow. I don't believe we have scientific evidence to support that. And that's absolutely not true, because as they point out here, a 2011 study found that cows are capable of feeling complex emotions and have the ability to form close friendships and experience anxiety if they're separated. And even without any kind of study, if you just go and watch any of the footage where calves are separated from their mothers, you will see that there is an immediate reaction and there is stress both on the part of the calf and the mother. And if you just look at any mammal that basically, nurses its young and, kind of like has a bond with their child, you can just know that taking it or endangering it in any kind of way is going to really, really anger the mother. And, I think I've covered before, like there was a case where a woman got charged by a cow on her farm, and because of the separation of the calf and all this kind of stuff. So this is just clearly nonsense, and I just find this like really annoying that the RSPCA can't even pretend like it's in favor of humane treatment, because they are just siding with their industry, basically like payout. So yeah, they're just told what to do. And it says in our country they dump excess milk in poor countries for development. Yeah, that's actually something that's been going on for quite some time. I remember there was a great video that Dr. Greger did a long time ago, and I don't remember which video it was. I could probably dig it up if anybody's interested, but he was talking about how after World War II there was like just tons and tons of powdered milk that was left over in stocks in the US, and rather than basically disposing of it, or because it was going to like it was reaching the end of its shelf life, they basically just lobbied at the United Nations to increase the amount of protein recommendation for people. I think it was. I don't remember if it was protein specifically, but I think it was. And then they basically use that as an excuse to then pawn it off and force it onto countries like in Africa and the developing world, so that they could basically make money off of their powdered milk. So it's just insane, like what governments will do, and what the food industry will do to protect its profits and revenue. It's crazy. Yeah, meat is murder is right. That's when cows are the most dangerous. Absolutely. You don't want to get in front of any mother, honestly, when you're taking away their baby or going to do anything to it that the mother will even just view as being potentially dangerous. Like, I mean, what do they tell you if you're walking in the woods, right? Like, if you come in contact with like a bear cub, like the last thing you want to do is get anywhere near the bear cub. That's like, it's the same thing with all animals. All right. This one was a great story here on Veg News. Hawaii residents banded together and they shut down a 2,000-acre dairy farm. So they were basically, I guess like for years and years, like dumping, it says here, the 1,800 cow dairy was closed after discharging millions of gallons of urine and feces into a local waterway. And the residents got tired of it and they filed a lawsuit, and it's really kind of funny because they only got fined $25,000, which is like probably very little money. But I guess at some point, maybe the legal fees themselves were probably more. The dairy just decided to fold because it wasn't going to be, profitable for them, or maybe as profitable as they wanted. And it says we would continue the operation, but it has announced that milking cows will be removed from the property by February. And hopefully somebody else buys this farm and plants some plants. Maybe, I don't know, maybe do a permaculture style, veganic farm. Who knows? But in any case, I think it's a good first step, and shows you what consumers can do. And I can't say this enough. We need to band together as people and just not wait for politicians, because they're sure as heck not going to solve our problems for us. This was another bit of great news. Target is a major chain in the U.S. For anybody who's not there and isn't familiar with that, but they're a large kind of typical store that a lot of people go to, and they have tons and tons of different products, and they're kind of like one of these big stores that have everything. So like you can go there, you can do your grocery shopping, buy clothes, buy music, whatever, and they are introducing a bunch of new vegan ice creams made with almond milk, and they're going to be selling for really pretty, I think, value priced $3.59 each. And they're basically just saying in this article how it's a direct competition with some of the kind of more, I don't know, expensive kind of well-known names, because it's going to be like one of their own brands. It's Target's Archer Farms label. So basically they're saying that it'll just push it in front of a wider audience. More and more people will be tempted to try it. So I think this is great. It's a good bit of news that came out in November. This was actually a little bit of sad news. There was a polar bear in South Korea who had been living for 21 years in this little concrete pit in like dire heat. They had no cooling for this poor bear, and just the gawking tourists taking pictures of him and all this kind of stuff. And I guess like animal rights groups had been petitioning for years to try and get this poor bear relocated to a sanctuary, and unfortunately he died just a few weeks before they were set to move him. And yeah, it's just really sad that like they couldn't get him out of there, but understandable that he just couldn't he couldn't take it anymore. 21 years in this little concrete prison with having a bunch of idiots standing around looking at you and taking pictures and probably, who knows, shouting at him. And just really kind of sad to see that. This one, again, I say, people need to change things. Hi, Ellie. Nice to see you on here. And we can't wait for politicians. One of the groups that I've talked about before on these streams is Direct Action Everywhere, DXE. They were in several actions already that have received a lot of publicity in the past few years, and unfortunately many of their members are facing legal actions as a consequence of their demonstrations and basically like animal liberations. And they recently had a court case in Utah over some piglets that were taken from a farm and put into a sanctuary. And luckily they had some good support here from the actor who was in the movie Babe. So for anybody who doesn't know, this guy James Cromwell, he was in the movie Babe, and he is apparently a vegan. I didn't know that, but he was there to support them, and he made an impassioned speech at the Utah Capitol, and apparently I guess he was even holding a dead piglet as part of the protest, and they met with the assistant to the governor, I think, or something like that. The governor wasn't there, but it was just nice to see somebody out there. And again, the more that people with big followings, the more that people are like well-known, well-respected people kind of like they're the general population is just going to be more keen on listening to somebody that they view in a good way, because maybe Babe is their favorite movie or something like that. If they see this guy out there fighting for the DXE members to get a fair trial, then all the better. So I think this is just really good and nice to see. Okay, and this one is a kind of opinion piece that I thought was great. It was talking about the decision in California to ban the restricted movement of animals, like farm animals. So they were going to get rid of the battery hens, the cages for the battery hens and all this kind of stuff, and the farrowing crates for the pigs. And this article is making a case that Canada needs to get on the ball, and they also talk about how they have very little in the way of any kind of animal protection laws in Canada. Sadly, that is the case for most of the U.S. as well. So I think this ruling in, or not ruling, sorry, but this law change in California is really kind of the first of its kind, I think, in the U.S. And hopefully it does impact other states who try to import anything, ship anything and sell anything in California. They're going to be forced to comply with that law as well. And maybe even if the state itself doesn't, enact a change, the producers in the other states might actually make a change just because they want to sell in Canada. Sorry, in California. So there was some interesting statistics here where they said that California is the most populous state, if I remember right. And where was it? It was like really interesting. I hadn't seen it. Anyway, maybe I'll just move on. Okay, most populous state of the U.S. and the 5th largest economy in the world. So that's pretty amazing. I think it's, you know, we've talked about this in previous streams. I don't think it's a solution to everything. Like, obviously, you know, the end of the animal exploitation would be the best thing, but it's still a step in, you know, in the right direction. It's like they're at least trying to, you know, get people aware that these animals live in deplorable conditions, and that maybe something can be done to at least make their lives not be a living hell from day one to the day they're dead. You know, they're obviously still going to get killed. They're still being exploited. It's still a terrible thing, but like maybe it's the step, you know, the first step that wakes people up and gets more people conscious of things, and then, you know, forces change in other places. And, you know, the neighbors across the border here are taking note, and people are saying that, you know, Canada needs to enact similar laws. So yeah, I think it's good. Okay. Sorry, I didn't even realize you were streaming too. Plus, I had a bunch of technical difficulties at the beginning, so I don't think you missed too much. Okay, now this one I wanted to talk about. There was a lot kind of going on in the past few weeks where I talked about the Waitrose editor-in-chief who basically made some terrible, you know, jokes going back to this young lady, Celine Nelson, when she pitched a idea for doing a plant-based cooking show. The guy, was his name, William Sitwell, he basically wrote back a really sarcastic like letters in email suggesting that why don't we do a show about killing vegans and all this kind of crazy stuff. And she wrote a great article, so I think I actually got this from Meat is Murder, so thank you, Meat, for sending this over. And we were talking about this in the comments actually on one of the videos. And you know, I think she did a really good job of kind of explaining, you know, what it was that made her, you know, basically share the email with media, and why she did it, and, you know, why in particular, you know, it felt bad, and why she thinks it wasn't inappropriate for her to share this. And then they also mentioned that she actually met and sat down with Sitwell as part of some other BBC show. I think it's called, yeah, BBC One. And I have to say that when I read this, you know, her take on it was pretty positive, and, you know, she seemed like, okay, yeah, he's not that, you know, like, he didn't really mean that we should be killing vegans, and he seems like kind of like an okay guy or whatever. And what I think is actually, I went and I found the video where they sit down and talk, and I actually think quite the opposite. I think the guy is an actual jerk. Like, he in no way seemed genuine to me in his apology, and he also just didn't seem like at all understanding that it was really kind of like his own stupid behavior that cost him his job. Like, they kind of try to guilt trip the lady into being like, well, you know, but he lost his job. Do you think that, you know, your actions were kind of appropriate? And it's like, dude, it's not her fault. The guy's a complete jackass and, you know, did a whole bunch of stupid stuff and wrote it down and sent it in an email. I mean, that's like business, you know, etiquette 101. You don't put things in email that you later might regret and want to pull it back, because once it's out, it never, you know, you can't just you can't pull that back. Ray Slayer's always trying to get me in trouble. Anyway, so yeah, I think if anybody's interested, you know, watch this video. You know, what's your take on it? But I actually think the guy didn't seem sincere at all, and I feel like she was very justified in her action, and I don't think he's really learned anything. I think he's just doing like a PR stunt to basically say like, yeah, I'm kind of sorry, so that maybe he can get another job doing some other, you know, similar thing in some other magazine. But I don't think he's really sorry at all about what he said. So yeah, lip service, exactly. Okay, so yep, this next one is just an interesting one for the U.S. If anybody follows any of my kind of gardening you know, topics and videos, like, you'll know I talk a lot about kind of harvesting rainwater and using the mulch to conserve water, and especially kind of going on the back of the story that I already mentioned, how the environment is going to be more and more impacted by the climate change, and we're going to have droughts in places that normally didn't have them. It's probably going to be more and more important. But this article talks about why it is illegal to collect rainwater in some states in the U.S. And I've heard about this before. I've heard it mentioned in some of the kind of permaculture and homesteading videos that I watch. But I had never really known, you know, much of the specifics. But apparently, some of the states out west, they have these rules on the books, going back from like the mining days, where people were using the water to sift through the stuff that they were mining, like gold and whatever, and silver. And there are kind of like water property rights to be kind of respected, and so there's only so much water that you can withhold on your property and, you know, not allow it to kind of flow past and go to other places. So they give an example about a guy who got fined, or maybe did he even go to jail? I don't remember. Oh, he was sentenced to 30 days in jail for collecting rainwater illegally on his own property in Oregon. And at first that kind of sounds like it's you know, kind of a weird thing, but he was actually collecting like a lot of water. So they said he had 20 Olympic-sized pools worth of rainwater collected. He was doing this across 40 acres that he owned. So, I mean, that probably, you know, makes it be a little bit less kind of extreme if you think about it. He's got a lot of land that he's collecting the rainwater on, but I mean, he built up like these big 20 feet tall dams and all this kind of stuff. So just interesting little bit, and not really, you know, vegan related per se, but just kind of shows you what some of the problems we might be seeing as the environmental impact of you know, climate change hits. So yeah. Okay. Next, orca whales found to display personality traits similar to humans. This was talking about a psychology study that was done on orcas that were kept in captivity in SeaWorld and various zoos. And they basically looked at some kind of like modeling that is similar to what they look at in people to determine personality traits. And what they found is that orcas do indeed have personalities that are very similar to humans. They form social groups, they have tight-knit communities, just like humans and other primates, it says. So basically what they said was that you know, they looked at 38 personality description adjectives, and they revealed that the orcas displayed 4 of the personality traits. So you know, they go through kind of the methodology of what the study was looking at, and they said that even, you know, given the small sample size of our study, we must be cautious in our conclusions. However, the similarity of personality structure across primate species and killer whales suggests evolutionary convergence. Perhaps this type of personality structure and the distinct individual differences in behavior that this structure implies are associated with complex sociality, including long-term dyadic relationships and the cognitive abilities that go along with complex sociality. So again, just, you know, just another example of you know, whales, orcas, whatever, dolphins being very social creatures, very intelligent, you know, and they should be treated with a lot more respect and not be kept in captivity. Just another reason to think that, like, just like it would be, you know, inhumane to keep a person locked up in a little prison, even if it was a nice, you know, little playroom, it's not right. And just like people wouldn't be able to handle that kind of like you know, confinement, these animals also have a difficult time with it. Mia's Mer says we are only at the beginning of what we know about animals. Yeah, and sadly, I think, you know, the thing that frustrates me is that a lot of the kind of studies that are done, it's almost like like they need to do some kind of like scientific evaluation to basically confirm what we would already know just by looking at them. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that we covered in previous segments of this news streams that I've been doing, you'll remember the poor orca who was keeping her dead baby afloat for like, I don't know however many days it was. It was like weeks on end, and the mother orca was grieving and wouldn't let her dead baby sink down to the bottom of the sea. And it's just like I'm sorry, you don't need a study to tell me that they have like a tight-knit community and that they have like human like personality traits or whatever. Like that's just obvious from looking at just that case. And it frustrates me when like it's like we have to do some kind of scientific study and like kill animals and like look at their brains and do all this kind of stuff and do vivisection to confirm things that you can really just kind of see with just plain observation, just by like looking at them in the wild. And just drives me crazy. Like I don't know, I just get really frustrated with animal testing in general. Here's another one. In Japan, they captured 25 of these bottlenose dolphins. This is part of the annual kind of like hunt that they have in Taiji. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I believe that's where they made the movie The Cove, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where it is. But anyway, oh yeah, it is. Yeah, they're famous worldwide after the film The Cove brought attention to it. But yeah, just another year and another roundup of poor dolphins there, and many of them are killed and some of them are sold off. It's just insane, and yeah, it just really breaks my heart to see this kind of stuff. Leon says, it seems even some ants pass the mirror test for self-awareness. Humans can only do that from 18 months onwards. Yeah, I mean, think about that, and absolutely, like insects are probably the last thing people even think about, because they're not cute, they're not kind of like furry, fuzzy little things, like at least like with like pigs or things like that, like, or like even cows, like when they're little babies, like people think they're cute, so they probably associate with them a little better. But like with ants and small insects and stuff, like people don't even think anything of them. And yeah, it's just terrible. Leon says the concept of intelligence should really be worked on, reworked. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I just get frustrated that like somehow how smart the animal is, somehow that should dictate the morality of how we treat them. It's completely laughable. Like, we don't even understand them, and instead of just giving the poor creatures the benefit of the doubt, like we have to like reserve our kindness until like we know that they're smart. Like, how many people do you know that get offended by this kind of stuff with the dolphins getting killed, but the fish, like, if you like go on a catfish hunt or something like that, like people will just go and be like, okay, make some gumbo. Like they just don't put the two and two together. It's literally the same thing. You just don't know because we don't know that much about them. It's just crazy. Sverige barks at himself in the mirror and tries to eat his reflection. I wouldn't be surprised sometimes. That guy's literally loony. Some scary stuff going on over there with Sverige. Team Carnivore. Sea Voice News, another article. The thing is, they found a bunch of I think these are beluga whales, or I forget what kind they are. Beluga whales. There were 10 orcas and 91 beluga whales that got captured, and they are being held in pens in Russia, and they're going to be sold off to China. And there is a person called Oksana Fedorova who was posting images and videos on Facebook and basically trying to bring international attention to this. And she reported that they were getting moved and put into transportation tanks so that they could be split up and have less observation on them, because again, they probably don't want the buyers to be found out. And it's just sad. This is just going on as we speak. Like right now, in today's day and age, people are still capturing these wonderful, marvelous creatures and selling them off to SeaWorld or other kind of companies around the world. I'm sure in China it's not SeaWorld, it's probably some other company, but still. Raceler says, did you see him drink blood from his friend's wound? No, and I'll be honest, Raceler, I don't even watch Sverige. I mean, I did that debunking video like a long time ago for Logan's channel when I was a guest spot on there, and that was probably the last time I actually watched a like full-on like Sverige video. A couple times I've watched like mini segments of his ex-vegan interviews, but I try not to even watch those because they just rile me up, and like I could do another video about him, but like why? I feel like I really covered everything. I mean, I think if anything he's just gotten worse since I did that video, like, but I think like that video is enough. Like the guy's doesn't know what he's talking about, and I just don't think there's really like that much more that I can add to that discussion. Like I think just I don't watch him. I try not to contribute to his clicks or his views. Hey Liam, long time no see, man. Casper says I watch way too much Sverige. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can just get into kind of trouble watching that guy. He's crazy. Definitely got to go now. Sitting in Sainsbury's Cafe, my own cleaner, brushing around. Cool. Well, take it easy, meat. See you next time. It was good to have you on. All right. Next one. Really sad story. New Zealand. They had 145 pilot whales washed up and stranded on the beach, and this is kind of going on the story that I've talked about before, where a lot of these whales are being affected by sonar or other underwater sounds potentially that spook them, and then they go and have like the bends basically when they're surfacing too fast, or sometimes they get disoriented. They could be drowning if they dive farther. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of problems, and you just see more and more of these like strandings and dead whales washing up on shore. It's like really sad, but this was another pretty big event. 145 stranded in New Zealand. Liam says, Raceler, I think there is a person in Ask Yourself Discord that is you. Can you confirm this? By me. Leon says, I don't watch him either. Seeing him in videos that make fun of him is enough. Search for me. Yeah. Okay. So this one is kind of a weird story for me. I saw this, and some part of me thinks like, yeah, this is great. Like they blew up a ship that was doing illegal whaling. The Spanish Navy seized this boat off the Somali coast, and they obviously pulled off all the people from the ship. They didn't just like blow it up with the crew on, but they towed it out to a spot in the sea, and they literally torpedoed the thing or whatever. They blew it up. So the part of me that is obviously kind of like happy about this is that it's like one less boat going and killing whales. But then I just find it weird that they would just like blow up a ship in the ocean and like make it sink to the bottom, and like how much environmental damage is this causing too? Like it's just weird. It seems kind of like this gung-ho kind of like, yeah, we're gonna blow it up. It's just kind of weird. Like couldn't they just like, I don't know, tow it in and like, I don't know, like give it to some charity or something, or I don't know. Like it's just weird. Yeah, did they remove the oil? I don't know, and it didn't sound like it. It was just like they just pulled it out and they just blew it up, and it's just weird to me. Like I don't know, where did they say? Yeah, I don't remember where I saw this. It may have been in a different article. Oh no, here it is. The crew of ESPS Castilla, this is the Spanish ship, tracked this illegal vessel to a small bay where they seized it, removed the crew, and towed it out to sea to be destroyed. So it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I hope they removed whatever was on there, but like from this explosion and this black fiery ball of flame, like I don't know. I would think there's probably some pretty bad stuff that was still left on this ship. Like it's horrible. Like I don't know. It just seems such a weird thing to do to me. Hi, Vohan. Okay, so moving on because we gotta go. My kids are going nuts here. They want to go take a bath. In a blow to marine life, Trump administration greenlights seismic blasting in Atlantic. So this just it goes on the the back of what I just told you guys before, and what we talked about in previous episodes, that the sonar and sounds and all this kind of stuff, like underwater explosions and sounds, are disturbing to whales. And right now they're talking about the Trump administration issued permits that allows seismic testing in the Atlantic Ocean. So they basically have these little mini kind of like detonations. They're like these small explosions, and they use it to basically map out the seafloor. They're trying to find like oil and gas deposits. And they've given out these permits for these companies to do this. And it's not just like they do, one of these little blasts and then they get a picture and then that's it. And it's like, well, a few whales die, like screw them. It's actually way worse than that. So if you look at this part, this was shocking to me. I had no idea. It says the blasts are as loud as dynamite and fired every 10 seconds for weeks, sometimes months. So they can, here it says it will allow airgun blasting for 1 year in large undersea areas off the Atlantic coast. So this is just absolutely shocking to me that like they could do this for months on end. And the poor sea life, the whales, like they use like the sound carried through the water to communicate. This is how they like look for stuff. This is how they stay out of danger. This is how they like do all of their life. It's almost like if you did this to people, you'd be like okay, we're just gonna drive you deaf with like loud dynamite blasts for months on end. It's like, what? Like I can't understand it. And for what? So that they can find more oil to contribute more like carbon dioxide to make climate change even worse. It's just like unbelievable. Yeah, Allie, it's just crazy. I couldn't believe this when I saw this. It's like, man, so sad. That's why I say like you can't wait for politicians to solve our problems. This is another thing I told you guys before about how they were talking about giving out permits, I guess, for the killing of sea lions, because they were going to be competing with these like salmon runs out in the Pacific Northwest, so in Washington State. And now they already have reports of people finding sea lions that are shot and beheaded and killed and all this kind of stuff. So it's just really sad. Like, I don't know, kind of nuts. Another bit of news here is from Canada. They've obviously gone into their winter season, and they have pretty severe cold temperatures. And this story highlighted a homeless man who had his dog freeze to death in his arms. It was like -16 or something. I don't even remember what, but like some brutally cold temperature. And they highlight the fact that in this city, I think it was Montreal. Where was this? Shoot, I don't remember. Montreal. Yeah. So they only have one animal. They only have one homeless shelter that will allow people to bring in animals. So it's actually very, very sad. And the article is doing a good job, I think, explaining that animals for homeless people are sometimes their only companion. It's the only thing that they have to live for. It's the only kind of companionship and friendship that they have. And without their companion animals, they are often pretty much not long for this world. Like some of them will actually not have any reason left to live. And they're talking about how they need to do more to allow them in with their animals, and also homeless people as couples as well. And this is a problem here in Hungary as well. I found out from my wife that I think there's only one shelter here in Hungary that will allow a couple, like a homeless couple, to stay together, because otherwise all the other shelters, they're separated by sex. So the men have to stay in one spot and the women have to stay in another. And there's obviously lots of abuse and everything. So it's really, really bad, and it's very difficult for homeless people. So it would encourage anybody, if you see anybody who's homeless, like try to help them out as much as you can. Back when I was a lot younger, I used to kind of have this hardline thing against like I'm not giving a homeless person money because like, oh, he'll just spend it on booze or whatever. But like I really take a different stance now. I think like just you really don't know what they're gonna spend it on. Maybe he would have spent it on food for his dog too, and you just don't know. And that's not your thing. You're giving it with the best of intentions. And I think if we can just try and help as much as we can, I think that's good. And we should definitely try to do pressure on like cities to do more for homeless people, and right now that's absolutely not the case. The world over, I just see more and more instances of homeless people being pushed to the side, and really it's out of sight, out of mind. There's a big problem with that here in Hungary as well. There's laws basically enacted recently that criminalize homelessness. So it's pretty terrible. Raceler says the city should have heated streets and sidewalks plus heated benches. Yeah, I mean, I think they need to do something, because letting people freeze to death is just horrible. Leon says Aaron Ra had a climate scientist in a podcast, but they ignored what animal agriculture does in the podcast and focused on fossil fuels. Liam says one of my goals is to have a heated driveway. Melt snow good. Yeah, I think, like, again, we have to look at how do we heat it. Like, we have to look at the environmental impact of that too. All right, moving on. Portugal, bit of good news. They banned all wild animal circuses, and I really like what they did here, because not only did they basically say that they will not allow any kind of animals in the zoo, in the circuses. Sorry, not zoos, in the circuses. But they also said that they're giving, I guess, people quite a few years, because it says they will no longer be allowed in circuses by the year 2024. But the good news is that they are actually giving economic incentive to the circuses who are going to be handing over their animals to, like, officially, recognized animal sanctuaries. If they do it sooner, they're going to get, like, government support and retraining for the workers, so they can do, like, other kind of stuff, and retool basically the circus into kind of like people-oriented entertainment. So I think this is fantastic. It's like they're not just saying it's banned, your business model is no longer going to get you any money, go figure something else out on your own. They're saying, like, look, if you wait until 2024, like, you're on your own. But if you do the right thing and you start, like, giving off these animals now to sanctuaries, then they're going to support them. And I just think that's great. So they're going to, like, give them money for retraining their people and getting them professional certifications to do other stuff. So I think this is, like, really awesome. And also here they said that Portugal joins many other countries across Europe working to improve animal welfare laws. Most recently, Czech Republic came forward toward moved toward banning the use of exotic animals in circuses. And the United Kingdom in February also announced that it would ban wild animals in its circuses by 2020. And it says when Italy implemented its circus animal ban, it saved 2,000 animals from suffering. That's a huge number. And again, these are all animals that people think are beautiful, smart, intelligent. They're cute. Well, especially when they're young. And yeah, just great bit of news there. Leon says homelessness should be illegal. They should be given a home whether they want it to or not. Well, yeah, we could have, like, a separate stream if you want. We can talk about this. I think there's a lot to be considered, but I kind of see what you mean. They already have heated streets that run off the extra heat from industries in some places, Raceler says. People can be nomads if they want to. Yeah, I kind of side with Raceler. I certainly wouldn't criminalize homelessness. I think there's a lot of problems with that, but I'd be interested in your thoughts. So maybe we could do a live stream if anybody wants to. We can talk about that separately. More bit of good news from the EU. They are looking to eventually ban all animal testing for, it says basically, with this additional 500 million euro investment. So, they have already banned cosmetic testing, which is great. I think that's, where was that, where they mentioned that? Yeah, here it is. 5 years ago, the EU banned the sale of cosmetics tested on animals. This move inspired other nations, including South Korea, India, and New Zealand, to enact similar bans. And now they're looking to do basically a ban on all sorts of testing, and they want to get, you know, appropriate models and look at ways that they can eliminate this, and they're willing to cough up 500 million euros to invest in these kind of projects and find alternative you know, ways to do testing. So it's really good. Liam says travel is a natural right and governments violate that right, not allowing people to enter. Changed my mind. Yep, you can leave the country if you get a permission slip, Liam. aka passport. Yep. I don't mind them being nomads. I mostly meant it towards them being put on the street being illegal. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Well, I think we'll probably be all in agreement. It's not about leaving, it's about coming to. If they can properly take care of themselves, being a nomad is not bad. Casper says, why is it wrong to violate a natural right? Well, I guess we can talk about liberty in general, but I mean, in my view, I think it's improper to impinge on somebody's liberty, provided that that person is not using their liberty to impinge on somebody else, you know, somebody else's liberty. So, I don't know. Yeah, Liam says violates liberty. That's exactly kind of what I was thinking. Yep. Okay, so that's a bit of good news. Along those lines, I found this interesting little article where MIT got a big grant from the Department of Defense to speed up clinical trial processes using a device that basically grows human organ tissues in this kind of lab environment, and it can be used to test specific protocols and you know, like basically in, you know, testing for, you know, disease, you know, medicine, you know, all this kind of stuff. So it's really cool. They have this pretty good interview. It's written out as well. If somebody doesn't want to take the time to listen, you can just read the transcript. They're talking about some of the difficulties. What is it, you know, potentially going to be used for? How this could impact, you know, all sorts of good stuff, even from like dosing of, you know, medications and all this kind of stuff. It's really cool. And I think just the more technology kind of catches up to, you know, doing these kind of tests, the more we can even not have to wait to convince people of the ethics behind it. It's just going to be something that you can actually just do it with the technology, and it'll be a moot point, because it's going to be easier to grow some cells in a petri dish than it is to, you know, keep animals alive and perform horribly cruel and inefficient and, yeah, basically stupid tests that don't show anything. This next thing is going to the UK. I found this interesting post on Twitter by this guy, Mark Avery. He's like an animal conservation kind of expert guy or whatever, and he's an advocate for rewilding areas and you know, bird conservation and all this kind of stuff. And he's basically talking about the difficulties encountered with trying to repopulate some white-tailed eagles to the Isle of Wight. And they wanted to basically, you know, bring some of those birds back, but they had to go through like a huge red tape rigmarole to try and convince the local authorities that it was going to be okay. And here's the kind of like the key point of the person's article. How is it that introducing an extirpated English breeding species requires so much consultation and thought, whereas the release of 44 million non-native pheasants into the countryside each year requires no license, no impact assessment, and no consultation? Why is that? And I think, you know, we've talked about hunting before, and especially for anybody you know, watching this from the UK, if you guys are hip to the hunt saboteurs, Ellie, I'm sure, you know, you've covered them quite a bit on your channel. If anybody hasn't signed up to the Fun Face, she's on here in the chat. Go subscribe to her channel. She does great videos, and you know, she's covered the hunt saboteurs quite a bit. But basically, it's a huge industry. People make a lot of money, and there's a lot of like rich, noble, you know, jerks basically living in the UK who are unfortunately clinging to this like barbaric tradition of hunting down animals completely needlessly. And as part of that, every year, according to this guy, Mark Avery, they release 44 million non-native pheasants into the countryside, so that then these, you know, rich idiots can go on and shoot them and kill them. So it's just absolutely beyond ridiculous, and yeah, it's just really kind of annoying that as he points out, when he's trying to reintroduce like a native species, he has to go through like all this due process. And when they do 44 million non-native species, then they're allowed to do it. Here is a kind of follow-up story that person linked, where they talk about the number of pheasants getting released into the UK and how they die. And this article completely just takes it from the point of view of basically like the game management, so basically the hunters, where they talk about the losses that they experience due to natural processes like the animals not being able to reproduce, or getting killed by predators, or just not being able to like get enough food or whatever, just all this kind of stuff. And they're saying that even if they could just improve their survival in the wild by 1%, it would mean 350,000 fewer birds dying of natural causes, and then you could still shoot the same number and maintain current shooting levels. It's just like absolutely crazy when you read this like thing, that the main focus here is just, we want to still kill the same amount of birds, but we don't want to have to like waste all this extra effort by breeding and releasing 350,000 extra. So let's think of ways of how we can keep more of them alive. And you wonder why some of these predator animals are being hunted as well, so that they don't go and attack these pheasants and all this kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting article because it's totally taken from the side of the hunters, but it's really eye-opening for somebody who's advocating against the hunting. I think this is a really good read, so definitely check this out. Raceler says, nothing noble about hunting needlessly. Yeah, I didn't get to read your other comments because you retracted them, but yep, I would agree with that. Casper says, well, yeah, but why is that wrong? I'm not disagree that I'm a libertarian myself and value liberty the most, but I don't understand the natural rights stuff. I think people of a country, Leon says, have a right to protect their sovereignty by allowing only the people they want in, which will take a system like we have today. Yeah, I kind of don't want to get into that discussion, guys. Sorry, because I still got a few more articles to go, and I think that's a big discussion. This is kind of the last thing, and I apologize for the graphic image related to this hunting stuff. Basically, a lot of these hunters and their various associations will always claim that these pheasants, they put food on the table for families and whatever, and that they get shot and then they get brought to shops around the country, and they get sold and they get eaten. And what activists have revealed is that that's a complete lie, and many times there are just way more birds that get shot than can be used and or sold, and they will literally just get shot and then thrown into pits where they just are left to decompose and rot. And these stink pits, or whatever they're called, they're basically used to then attract like predator animals like foxes and other kind of stuff, and then they go and they hunt and kill those too. So it's just like this never-ending cycle of just stupidity and just killing animals like needlessly, and it's just unbelievable. So yeah, I think this just really, these three articles together are a really good kind of statement against hunting as it's done in the UK, and I think yeah, just I encourage everybody to read that other one specifically about how they want to keep alive more of these things. And also that article started, just to jump back, this one about how many pheasants are killed just by just by natural causes, quote unquote. It really kind of shows you the kind of stupidity that vegan activists are often faced with when we're told, like, oh, if you don't kill them, like, they'll just overpopulate and take over the whole world. It's like, no, they won't, because if you look in this article right here, it says around 60% of the pheasants released for shooting in the UK do not end up on their intended fate, being shot. So that means 60% goes to waste. So the waste from the sense of the hunter, i.e. they're not able to get shot, they're killed by something else. So you have to realize, like, 60% of these animals get killed within a year because they're already dying before the hunters even get a chance to go and kill them. So many times these animals wouldn't have a chance at surviving very long in the wild, and this really just debunks that idea of, like, you need to kill them so that they don't overpopulate. That's completely nuts. Race Larry, you're awesome. Liberty is important because it allows people to explore all of their preferences on their own accord, making it fundamental to their subjective well-being. The opposite to liberty would be slavery. I would agree with that. This article talks about the Brexit deal, and it kind of poo-poos the idea that I guess some people who voted for the Brexit deal did so because they thought that it would allow them to end live animal export from the UK. And this article sadly points out that that is not going to be the case. And, Theresa May and gang have basically made moves to continue that horrible situation, and that most likely live export will still continue because it's too big a part of the economy to stop. And even the alternative to it is not a really pretty picture from a vegan activist standpoint, because the alternative is kill the animals, process them there, create jobs, in the slaughterhouses, and then ship off the meat. So it's a really sad situation, but I think just more than anything, it was just interesting because I guess some people voted for Brexit because they thought that would be an end to live export. I didn't really understand, what kind of demographic would have thought that, but anyway, it's just an interesting article. Okay, this one, speaking of live export, Egypt is apparently set to export cats and dogs to be used as meat in other countries. And it's just crazy. They're doing like medical tests now, and they're gonna clear 4,100 animals to be sent out. And you can see here they did not specify the countries they are exporting to, and this is indeed the case for this shipment, whose destination is as of yet obscure. It is noted that in early October, Member of Parliament Margaret Azar had proposed that Egypt should solve its stray dog problem by exporting the animals to countries that consume them for food. After being properly nurtured, a dog could be exported for like £5 each. Azar had argued that they would be as valuable as sheep here. So just a sad, sad story, and just goes to show you that it's not just Asia that are killing and eating dogs and cats. Although maybe those were bound for those locations, we don't know, but they're just as complicit in that market, even if the local people aren't eating them themselves. South Korea shuts down its largest dog meat slaughterhouse, and I guess just this is a positive story, and animal rights activists were very intricately involved in bringing attention to this facility and getting it shut down. And I think this was great news. I forget how many dogs they said were being processed at this place, but I mean it was just some huge number. They could hold several hundred animals at a time, and it was a major provider for dog meat restaurants across the country. So this was at least 6 slaughterhouses that were shut down. So I think that's great, and just really, really sad. Sorry for the pictures, but good news that that's getting shut down. Talking about hunters, we've talked about this before, about people getting shot, animals getting killed. I just saw a thing, I didn't even link it in today, but there was a hunt group that went across some highway in the UK right now. I think this happened today or yesterday or whatever, and a hound that was chasing the prey animal got hit by a car because they were going across a road. And it's just sad that people just don't realize that this is completely barbaric, and it has unintended consequences beyond even just killing the animal that they're hunting. This story is about a dog who was killed by a trap that was left on private land illegally, and this person was just walking their dog, and the dog got killed by the trap. And it's super sad. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this as well is that we talked about Canada goose and their continued use of coyote fur for the trim around their jackets. And what is the difference between between like this dog and a coyote? Yeah, the fur looks different, but that's pretty much it. They're just every bit as lovable and cute. And it's just sad that this is what's happening. Here is a story about some wolves that got killed in Yellowstone. So apparently, what happens is if the wolves go off of the national park property, farmers have a right to kill them. And they're talking about an iconic wolf that was photographed a lot by animal lovers in the park, and that that wolf was shot and killed by a hunter, and now years later, one of her cubs died the same way. And they talk about the problems that this causes as far as the hierarchy within the wolf pack, and the fact that they are again highly social creatures. They have like a specific dominance and hierarchy, and it's very damaging when one of these animals is killed, because it really messes up that whole hierarchy, and it really kind of calls into question whether they as a group can even survive. I mean, it's contrary to what the carnivore diet people will have you believe. Being a carnivore is not an easy thing. These animals often go long periods of time hungry, especially in the winter when the animals are scarce. Many animals migrate away, or it's hard for them to catch animals because they're in the snow and all this kind of stuff. And when you go and have humans go, mess that up, it really can kill the whole pack. So just really sad. A bit of good news, because I don't want to just all be negative news here. This is a Patreon page for a guy in Serbia, and he runs a dog sanctuary. He actually lives there. He bought land, I guess, on the outskirts of town so that it would be cheap, and he takes care of dogs and tries to find homes for them and all this kind of stuff. And there was a great video that I saw where they kind of showed some of his actions and some of his dogs, and I guess he's caring for 450 dogs right now. So please, if anybody does have the financial wherewithal, if you want to consider helping dogs out, help this guy. Check it out. He's got videos up too where you can see the the place he's living with the dogs, and see that it's a legit thing. And obviously caring for that many animals requires a lot of money. So if somebody can, check that out. Race lovers calling out Liam for deleting all his videos. Yeah, man, Liam, why? We'll have to talk about that sometime. But put up all your videos, man. They're all good. Put them all back. All right, next one. Vegan goat company. I just saw the goat yoga over there on the side. Vegan coat company launches fur and down donation drive. So this is another bit of good news. There is a Canadian vegan outerwear company. They make jackets and all this kind of stuff. They use fully vegan materials. They want people, I guess this is their name, Wuxley. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but they're saying people bring down your fur trimmed or down-filled jackets. They'll donate them to homeless shelters and animal rehabilitation centers, and in exchange, they'll give you $275 towards buying a new coat, a new vegan coat. So I think this is great. They're encouraging people to do the right thing, especially if you're, if you got the kind of money to buy one of these jackets. They're really expensive. Then do the right thing. Give it to them, give it to a homeless person, and buy a vegan one instead. So yeah, check it out. And I want to say a few more things about this, so I'll jump to the next article here. Oh, I think I maybe put that in the wrong place. Sorry. I'll say it later. Okay. I thought I had that article next. Anyway, this one is basically a article I talked about in the last stream, I think. A huge government grant that Canada was putting in to encourage small businesses and economic growth. And one of the things was actually a very positive bit of news. They were contributing money towards some plant-based, mock meat or whatever, plant-based protein companies, and that was a fantastic thing. But here you can also see that they are investing heavily as well into a packaged meat producer. So there is, here it is, the Honorable Lawrence Macaulay, Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, on behalf of the Honorable Navdeep Bains, Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, announced a $28 million investment in Maple Leaf Foods. So this is a huge, packaged meat producer in Canada, and they are going to be investing $660 million in a new state-of-the-art, environmentally leading facility in London, Ontario. And in addition to the 660, they're getting the 28 from the government. And it says it's part of an overall project cost of $744 million, which includes additional startup and adjustment costs. And they're basically making a huge new facility that's going to be killing animals and processing them into meat. And it's just a terrible, terrible thing that, basically like the Canadian tax, dollars are going to be spent on this. Like, as much as I applauded them for, spending it on the plant-based, protein options, this is a step very much in the wrong direction. And this article just really kind of talks about like how great this is for the environment, for the economy, not for the environment, for the economy, and how much it's going to add to the GDP and how many people are going to get hired and all this kind of stuff. And I just think this is really sad. They're focusing on the wrong thing. This opinion piece is talking about the previous said article. Jessica Scott Reed, shout out to Jessica. I follow her on Twitter. If anybody's on Twitter, follow her. She writes great editorial pieces for many different syndications, and she wrote a great piece slamming this and basically saying that the Canadian government should be doing the opposite, and they need to be getting on the ball and investing in the right things, and investing in the leading cause of environmental destruction and damage is not the way to go, regardless of how environmentally advanced their facility will be. It's still just a terrible thing and shouldn't be happening. So kudos to Jessica, and check out her stuff on Twitter. Okay. Leon says that kid cried at just the right time. I don't know what that means, but anyway. Okay, now we get back to the fur thing. I thought this was the next story. Sorry. So there is a four-time Northern Olympian athlete who basically wants fur back on the Canadian Olympic uniform, and I, find this to be, kind of a difficult situation, because this person, Shannon Firth, she is a, I guess a native, I forget what they call this in Canada. Shoot, First Nation. So okay, so hold on, sorry. I don't remember which tribe she's in, but anyway, she is a member of one of the the first peoples in Canada, and she's actually, I guess, like one of the first people who was on the Canadian team, I think, even back in like the 70s. And so this lady is basically saying like, it's in our tradition, it's our heritage, blah blah blah, we should have fur, not plastic, and all this kind of stuff. And I just find this incredibly frustrating, and it's difficult, because for people who are living kind of the traditional lifestyle, and they are using animals like that, it's really kind of a different thing. If you're doing it for survival, that is not the same thing as just some person who's living in a huge city like Montreal or Toronto or whatever, and can just go to the store and just buy whatever they want. Or somebody who's going to an Olympic team, it's like, this is not this romanticized idea of the person living up in the in the great wild, and then they need the fur so that they don't freeze to death. And it's just totally not the same thing. But I think they're trying to kind of paint it as this like appeal to nature, appeal to history, appeal to tradition, and it's very frustrating. So I think the only thing that I would really take issue with her is that where was the quote? She said, yeah, my parents were hunters and trappers, and that's how we grew up. We're a fur universe. And then she had a quote where she said that we're not a plastic people. Here it is. The fur industry has a history in the North, and then to have fake fur on coats, that's crazy. We're not plastic people. It's pitiful. Now, the part that really kind of gets me is that, sadly, I have to admit that back in the day before I was vegan, I was actually very much into like using leather, using natural, quote unquote, natural materials over, plastics. I wouldn't want to get like, a fake leather pair of shoes, or like, some kind of plastic jacket. Like I would look for stuff made out of like cotton, or like, stuff like that. And the thing that I didn't know at that time, which I do now, is that it's really kind of an appeal to nature, and it doesn't fit well, because if she's worried about the plastic, being the fake fur, like what about all the chemicals that are used now to handle and treat the fur and the leather? It's not like in the old days where they would use the sun and salt and whatever, and they would just dry it out, and it was far less environmentally damaging than it is now in today's day and age, when they use incredibly toxic like man-made chemicals to treat the leather and the fur to keep it from rotting. And they're trying to romanticize it in a way that like makes people think that it's still this like natural thing. It's totally unnatural. What about all the plastic that goes on every other thing that can't be made from animal products like fur and leather? Like what about the the ski boots, or like the skis themselves? Like those aren't made from natural materials. They're not made from wood, like in her traditional ancestors would have probably made like snowshoes out of like trees and like leather and whatever. Like nobody uses that stuff. So why should the fur be any different on the trim for the coat? It makes no sense. It's just completely crazy. And thankfully, several, I guess, like vegan Olympic athletes have come out and spoken out against her, and said that they don't want fur on the on the uniforms. So Leon says fur does not fit in the Olympic spirit. I agree. So hopefully that it doesn't come back. And you can see that markets are really dictating this as well. There's more and more fashion companies and design companies that are ditching leather, ditching fur, and nobody wants to buy it. And I think they're listening to their customers, and that's how we affect change. So here's another one. Chanel commits to ending use of fur and exotic animal skins as fashion textiles. So this is great news, and they follow a whole bunch of other companies that are doing the same. So it said, they don't list the companies, but I think I've covered some of them already. So, like in previous streams, I mean, there's just more and more companies now that are banning it. And here in September, Los Angeles became the largest city in the U.S. to ban the sale of fur. Here they talk about the UK-based Lincoln Christmas Market. They banned the sale of fur. So it's just like it's slowly changing, but I think it really, that's a good positive thing. So, yeah. And more positive change. This guy is a dairy farmer in New Zealand, and he gave an interview in which he basically talked about plant-based alternatives being a positive thing, and he's encouraging people in his industry to go and look into these options and start adopting the things, because he's saying the customer is speaking. Listen, it's an opportunity, it's a business. So he's right on the money. Like that's all he cares about, and that's what most of these people care about. They care about money. They care about profit. He said, "I think Impossible Foods are only about 3 or 4 years old, and they are worth $388 million. People want to make money out of this, and they see it as the next big thing, and it is. And if people get on board now, you can save yourself trouble later." So I think, yeah, here it is. He says, therefore, us to jump on board and slot some products onto the market. I think if we did that, we would diffuse the situation. It's not our job to try and convince a vegan to eat meat. Boom. So kudos to this guy. Hopefully he stops his dairy production and switches to, plant milk, like the dairy in New York that I covered. So kudos. This one, just very briefly, I just wanted to, I don't know if I have any viewers from India, but if I do, hello. And this was a pretty interesting little thing where they said Chennai was crowned India's most vegan-friendly city. They based it on, I guess, like the number of restaurants and options and all this kind of stuff, and food, places to go. And yeah, it's really cool. So it says people in India are increasingly concerned about issues that tie in with veganism, like animal welfare. Last year, India banned the use of all animals in circuses, following reports of animal cruelty. That's something I just mentioned in the other article. In August, the country also banned all live animal exports after widespread protests against shipments for religious animals sacrificed in the UAE. So, great news. And I guess if you're in India and want to go visit, go to Chennai. The decline in U.S. life expectancy is unlike anything we've seen in a century. This wasn't really related to veganism per se. I just wanted to mention this because I have seen several kind of reports in the recent past about how this generation growing up now in the U.S. is actually set to be the first generation that is expected to live less than their parents' generation. And it's just a really kind of sad state. And this kind of talks a little bit about some of the reasons or some of the areas where people are seeing, the shrinking life expectancy. And so they say 3 things have contributed to America's shrinking life expectancy in recent years: drug overdoses, chronic liver disease, and suicide. So, I just think, again, it's not vegan related per se, but a lot of these things can be helped with a whole food plant-based diet. Drug overdoses, I think Dr. Greger talks a lot about this in his How Not to Die presentations. I think in the top 15 causes of death, like medical, mistake, basically like malpractice, or not even malpractice, I think that's the wrong word, but basically some kind of like error on the part of doctors is actually kind of one of the top 15 causes. I forget which one. And a lot of times they prescribe the wrong medicine, or the medication has a side effect, an adverse reaction. It could be, an allergic reaction or genetic reaction, all sorts of kind of stuff. So I think just the fewer medications people are on, the less chance there obviously is for overdoses and, dosing problems and all sorts of stuff. So, the other thing is chronic liver disease. That is a huge problem, and obviously, that can be helped. Kidney function can be helped by a whole food plant-based diet. And, I think like suicide, that's always a tricky one, but mental health is, I think if anything, shown to be better on a whole food plant-based diet than a standard American diet. So, Leon says fatty liver is mostly caused by refined sugars and saturated fat. Well, and we all know that there's way too much of that consumed by Americans in particular, but I guess worldwide now. They also broke it down by state, which was pretty interesting, and they showed that some of these southern states had the worst life expectancy, whereas some of the other ones had better. So you can see like California is a little bit better, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, some of these states were a little bit better. And then here you got like, Mississippi and some of these deep south states, or these, areas in red, they are not looking good. And they said, I guess, where was it? Yeah, here it is. Worldwide variation is enormous, but even within the United States, you can expect to live 6.6 years longer if you live in Hawaii, the top-ranked state, than in Mississippi, which comes in last. With its 81.3-year life expectancy, Hawaii looks more like the Netherlands than the United States. So I was actually quite surprised at that, too, because I've been to Hawaii, and you see a lot of overweight people there, too, so kind of interesting. But anyway, just interesting article. Next, there was a cool little story about this soap company. They are called Crooks Naturals, and they recently rebranded their thing, which is the first time they've done it in like I don't know how many years. They've been around since 1839, and they recently got the vegan and the non-GMO and non-animal tested, certifications. And they literally say that they did it to compete with, to maintain their kind of like market ranking with the competing brands. And the best part of this story for me was that their recipe has been vegan the whole time. So it's not like they changed the recipe to become vegan and then got the certification. They literally just went and paid to get the certification so that they could say that it's vegan, because they wanted to be in on the market, but that their product has been vegan the whole time. So I think that's really awesome. And I don't know. I don't see this where, where I shop here, so it's probably something, more in the U.S., but yeah, if you can, guys, and you want soap, like buy this Kirk's brand soap. Leon Kustra said, I'm sure we get a similar map when we compare meat consumption. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I figure you probably have more, like, vegans or plant-based dieters in California than, say, like Mississippi, probably. This next one is a article written by one of my all-time favorite plant-based doctors, is Dr. McDougall. He talks about Al Gore. And as many people probably know, watching this, Al Gore had the movie The Inconvenient Truth, and he talks a lot about the environmental impacts of human caused global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. And as many people have pointed out since, vegans especially, he kind of left out the inconvenient truth of the fact that, like, animal agriculture contributes more to the greenhouse gas emissions than any other industry. And this article is talking about basically Al Gore becoming vegan, and he used to, I guess, even have like a large number of beef cattle that he was having like on a ranch and all this kind of stuff. And this article talks about how he finally gave up those things and became more kind of like in line with the environmental message, and realizing that to really be an environmentalist you have to be a vegan. So this is a really great read, and the reason why I wanted to bring it up is not just because okay Al Gore and vegan whatever, but some of the things that McDougall talks here about big food companies and kind of the clout and the pull they have. So you can see where he's talking about how they've really kind of had like a 30-year winning streak. It says Big Food has been on a winning streak for 30 years. He talks about kind of the McGovern report. Dr. Greger has some great videos about the McGovern report from back in 1977. If anybody hasn't seen those, I highly recommend checking those out. But basically, it was an attempt by the Surgeon General to, was it the Surgeon General? I don't remember. Anyway, I don't remember who it was, but basically McGovern, whatever position he had, he came up with a report that was going to be the new dietary guideline recommendations for people in the U.S., and it was going to be like basically telling people to drastically reduce their saturated fat intake, cholesterol intake, and eat like more, more of a plant-based diet and less animal products, and less refined sugar as well. And basically the food industry came down heavy on it, and they rewrote the whole recommendation and left it with what we have basically. And McDougall calls all this stuff out, and he talks about some of the figures here that I wanted to share with you guys. He says, within the food system, power is concentrated in the hands of a few corporations. In 2008, and believe me that this has only gotten worse since then, but he says in 2008, 10 corporations controlled almost 90% of the global sales of pesticides, and 10 companies sold 67% of the global proprietary seed market. I'm sure that that's only gotten worse since then. In 2005, the top 4 beef packing firms controlled 83.5% of the market in the U.S. and worldwide. Think about that. 4 companies controlled 83%, and 40% of all groceries were sold by only 100 retailers. Now, you look at like what's happened since then with like Amazon and other, big companies. I mean, they're buying up stuff like Whole Foods. They're buying up other, smaller companies. It's only going to get more and more concentrated, and I think it's just incumbent upon us to be more and more aware of how much power big business has, and to really do our part and fight against it. So, this is like why I'm always harping on about, like, if you have any little bit of land, like if you have a yard, grow some of your own food, do some of your own gardening. Like, it's really kind of like important that we do this, and just try to get on the ball. So shout out to McDougall. I love Dr. McDougall. The guy's awesome. All right, I think we're getting near the end, so thanks everybody for sticking with me. We've got a couple more to go. This one is the conference that I mentioned to you guys in Poland, and this EcoWatch article called them out and basically did a wonderful job saying, like, look, you have this 12-day conference with 30,000 visitors, and they had a really meat-heavy menu available for the people to eat. And they said that if all the 30,000 visitors chose the meat-based dishes, at the 12-day conference, they would contribute the equivalent of burning more than 500,000 gallons of gasoline, or the greenhouse gas emissions attributed to 3,000 people flying from New York to Katowice. I don't even know where this is. Oh, maybe that's the place in Poland. I think that is probably. But anyway, so, you know, they were basically slamming them, and they said, like, look, they analyzed the menu that was available for people to eat. And what they said was that, look, you know, if you looked at the very few, you know, veggie options that they had, plant-based, dairy-free, plant-based, or meat-based, you can see the greenhouse gas emissions are through the roof for all the meat-based dishes. And as you go, you know, closer and closer to, like, the plant-based, dairy-free, you're getting lower and lower. So kudos to them for putting this together and, you know, doing the numbers. And they're basically saying, like, look, you know, you guys are meeting there, and you can't even get the menu sorted. You know, how are these people going to be solving the world's problems and solving, you know, climate change when they can't even get a freaking plant-based menu together? So just really, really crazy. And I think they did a good job here in this article. They said food is not a matter only of personal choice, but an essential factor in solving the climate crisis. Demand-side policies and efforts, including food waste reductions and shifting diets, prioritizing populations with the highest consumption of animal-based foods, are critical in achieving a climate-compatible food system and curtailing emissions. And this, I think, goes directly to some of the stuff that you know, you guys have been chatting with, and I've kind of briefly jumped in about liberty. You know, it's not just a personal choice. These kind of conventions and these kind of things, these are directly impacting upon the well-being and the liberty of other people that live in the world. So this is not just a matter of, you know, like, well, you know, screw everybody else, I just want to eat a steak. I'm not hurting anybody by doing that. It's like, you're obviously hurting the cow, but even you're hurting other people by doing this. And I think, yeah, people just need to be called out for this more and more, because you are impinging on the liberty of other people, the you know, the well-being of other people. This next one I just included because I think it was in the last episode that I talked about David Attenborough, and said some kind of, like, I guess, not so nice things about him. And I still stand by those from what I remember, you know, in the article. But it was nice to see that he came out and attended the UN Climate Summit, and he basically made a pretty stern and stark warning, and basically said we are already seeing increased impacts of climate change in China. Oh, sorry, that was a young woman. Another woman. Oh, sorry, that wasn't him. This is what he said. The world's people have spoken. Time is running out. They want you, the decision makers, to act now. Leaders of the world, you must lead. The continuation of civilizations and natural world upon which we depend is in your hands. And so he basically, you know, sounded the alarm and said that, like, look, people need to get their stuff together and reduce our, you know, impact on the environment. And also at this convention, or summit meeting or whatever, the young lady from, oh shoot, I think she's from Sweden, Greta, who I covered in a previous episode, she was there as well. I can't remember her last name, but anyway, and she delivered a really, really powerful speech and basically said, like, look, I'm not here to ask you anything because, like, I know you're going to ignore everything and not do it anyway. I'm here to basically, you know, like tell young people that we need to do something because, like, it's on us. The politicians aren't going to save us. So I just think, like, you know, kudos to her, man. I think, like, she gets it. Like, people need to start taking things into their own hands and making changes in their own life. You know, based on some of that, I think, you know, this is just more kind of like, look at the environmental impact we have with, like, plastics and all this kind of stuff. A lot of times, like, people don't realize it, but, like, the cosmetic industry, they've been using these, like, micro beads and all this kind of stuff, and, like, lotions and creams and stuff for people's faces and all this kind of ridiculous stuff. And all of those little microplastics, they get into the water and they are directly being consumed by animals, and it goes up the food chain. And they did a sample here of mussels in the UK, and they found that every single sample taken had microplastics, like, within their tissues. So if people are buying and eating these mussels, they are consuming these microplastics as well. There was another article, I don't think I included that one. Oh, it's right here, yeah. Microplastics found in 100% of sea turtles tested. So it's like, it's in everything. You know, these little beads are in everything. And again, we can't wait for politicians to like fix this problem. They're not going to. But it's up to us. Like, if you go, don't use cosmetics like unnecessarily. Like, I mean, like, why do people need to wear makeup? Like, and especially if you do, at least just try to get something that doesn't have microbeads, doesn't have any kind of plastic thing. Try to limit the amount of plastic packaging that is, on the product itself. I mean, like, those are the kinds of things that we can do. And of course, by being vegan, you can reduce the amount of plastic that's going in the ocean, because as I've covered in previous episodes, like 40 whatever percent, I think it's very close to 50% of the plastic in the ocean is like fishing gear, fishing nets, and all this kind of stuff that's left there. So, yeah. All right. Another bit of sad news, and again related to the climate change. There were 190 sea turtles that were found frozen to death off of Cape Cod, and they were basically saying that they had unseasonably warm weather, and then they got hit by this really cold spell, so they all froze because they hadn't gone down south for the winter yet, and it just struck them before they've had a chance to make it down south. And so I guess 227 of them were cold stunned, but only 54 survived. And then this whatever group was trying to help basically warm them back up and save them. So yeah, just kind of sad. So with all that said, I'm always kind of harping on about politicians not doing anything to help, but I have to applaud this effort. I think it was Ryan Murphy that shared this with me on Twitter, so shout out, thanks. But basically, Luxembourg is set to become the first country to make all their public transport free. This is something that I have personally thought is a good idea for like as long as I can remember, or definitely as long as I've been living here in Hungary and actually using public transportation. It's like there's so much infrastructure and like effort and waste that goes into just policing and selling the tickets of like the transportation, that I've argued for many times for many years now that like I'm sure it would probably cost the government less all in all if they just simply allowed people to ride for free, and then you didn't have to pay for the people selling the tickets. You didn't have to pay for the machines, the booths that you sell the tickets, the hole punching things, the people that go around like trying to make sure that you have a ticket and then fining you if you don't have a ticket. And Luxembourg is going to do this. So I think hopefully other countries follow suit, especially if this comes out economically advantageous. I'm sure that other people will follow. So I just think it's great. They're talking about how they have like severe congestion in and they have some of the worst traffic in all of Europe, and this is going to basically hopefully reduce that, because people are just going to be encouraged to take the public transport more. So kudos to them. This next one, animal welfare activists are appalled because slaughterhouses fail to install CCTV despite the deadline passing. This is in the UK. Apparently there was a law that got passed, and by November 5th, I believe, when was it? Yeah, they were supposed to be fully compliant, and they announced this in May, so they had a long time to get ready. It was like half a year roughly, and people still are not ready. And that's not the shocking part to me, because honestly, implementing stuff like this always takes quite a bit of time, I think. But the part that was shocking to me is that it really kind of goes back on something I've covered in a previous episode, where I talked about the pig farm in, I think it was Minnesota or wherever, and I showed how the local government is basically complicit because that's their largest employer and their largest tax base, and the EPA doesn't do anything to basically go and check their waste expulsion into the river and make sure that they're actually within their limits. And also the limits are set so artificially high that they basically almost never exceed them anyway, and even if they do, they pretty much are not fined, or they're fined very, very little. And this is pretty much exactly the same thing. So they're basically referring to this FSA, which is the Food Standards Agency, and they're talking about the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, and they're basically saying how a bunch of these companies are not done yet, and they also They also talked about, yeah, here it is, relating to how many slaughterhouses were failing to fully comply, were not publicly available. So we don't even know how many weren't fully compliant. And anything that was in the process of complying, they basically are like just being like, okay, that's totally cool. So it said here, asked if action would be taken against abattoirs that were not in compliance with the law, the FSA said it wouldn't take enforcements against slaughterhouses that had a plan in place. Perhaps they're not fully compliant at this very minute, but if they're showing a plan to install CCTV and become compliant in the future, therefore there would be no enforcement action needed to take right now. So it's like, all I have to do as an abattoir is just show you a plan that, like, at some point I'm going to do it. And then that's it. And then they don't have to do it. And of course, animal rights activists are saying this is ridiculous and they should be shut down. They're operating illegally and what have you. And yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you allow a industry to self-regulate and do whatever the hell they want. They do whatever they want. Okay, second to last article, guys. This one is a good story coming out of France. They are basically getting their first political lobbying group for animal rights. So there is this Convergence Animale Politique, CAP, and it is the first ever political lobbying group for animal rights, aiming to translate evolving opinions in the country into real political change. They are partnering with basically all of the animal rights groups in the country, and they are trying to get political push to get their agendas pushed through, and I think that's really good. So kudos to them. Good luck. They're going to be looking at hunting. They're going to be looking at circus entertainment, food animals, all sorts of stuff. So, great on them. Yeah. Oh, Leon wrote something, but I didn't catch it. Sorry, Leon. Last one, guys, and then I'm going to have to get going because my kids are going nuts and it's super late. They should be in bed by now. Turkey reprieve, 1 in 12 dream of meat-free Christmas dinner. So basically this article is just talking about how more and more people are going to be opting for a vegan or vegetarian Christmas Day meal, and they are saying that almost 1 in 5 hosts will be cooking for a vegan or vegetarian guest. So even if they're not doing a full vegan meal, they will have at least a vegan option because they have a vegan guest coming. And this is just awesome news. I'm really happy to see this. They're talking about all sorts of different options, different, Tesco and Sainsbury's and all these other kind of places that are seeing, Waitrose here, all these other places that are seeing more and more people demanding vegan products. They want, more options, and they're getting it. And I just think this is wonderful. And I'm going to end here and just say that I've been really busy the past few days. I'm not sure when I might do another one of these streams. If I, for some reason, don't get to do one before the holidays, I want to just wish everybody a happy holiday and hopefully a Merry Christmas without meat, and Hanukkah if you're celebrating Hanukkah, and anything else that you might be celebrating. And I just think the more we can encourage people and kind of win them over through their the heart is through the stomach, or whatever that is. the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I just think it's like the right way to go, and get people start making the connection slowly, get them to start seeing the ethical side of things after, once you start seeing how delicious and easy and cheap and, available a good, plant-based diet is. And, hopefully, we just see more, options becoming available. You're welcome, Leon. Thanks for being on. And thank you to everyone else who was on as well. So, happy vegan Christmas to you all too. Thanks, Leon. So thanks everybody, and hope to see you guys soon. I'll probably try to do another stream before the holiday, but yeah, we'll see. I've been really kind of busy. We'll talk soon. All right. I hope everybody liked this new format and you didn't get tired of looking at my face. I'm not sure, but all right, cool, man. See everybody later. Bye.